Ash Ketchum, you know the guy. Black hair, wears a hat, has a Pikachu, squiggly lines on his face, perpetually 10 years old, has traveled all across the great Pokemon world. But the question is he a good Pokemon trainer? My answer is yes, and here's why. So prior to recording this video, I had written up a whole script. I had written up a bunch of stuff that I wanted to say, and I had a whole bunch of bullet points as well, and I started trying to organize my thoughts, but I just couldn't do it. The document got way too long. There was too much to say, so I want to condense it. I don't want this to be me rambling. I want to have very specific points to prove my point of Ash being a good trainer. And honestly, it would be super easy for me just to say, oh, well, he's a champion now, so obviously he's got to be a good trainer. But that's not really the point. It's how he got up to that point. It's how he became the champion. All of the trials and tribulations that he went through, all of the victories and failures that he experienced that ultimately make him a good trainer. So let's break it down. What exactly has he done that makes him a good trainer? Well, number one, I'll start off with the biggest example out there, and honestly, this is one example that I think people try to use against him, but ultimately he prevailed. And that example is Charizard. Charizard is one of the most, it's an arc of its own, him having this Charizard, and it is something that, like, ultimately he prevailed as a trainer. He was able to finally connect with Charizard, and I think it shows that he really knows how to grow for one point. He knows how to connect with his Pokemon for another. And he's got patience. That's another thing. Patience is so freaking important. So to back up, Charizard as a Charmander was faithful to Ash. It was honestly, how they met shows Ash's character right there and there, because he saved Charmander. He had compassion and a caring attitude towards it. Even when Charmander went back to that dickhead Damien, Ash was still there to support him and tried to help him get to where he needed to be, and ultimately catching him and bringing out the very best in Charmander as it fully evolved. Charmander then evolved into a Charmeleon, and that's when things really went off the rails for a large part of their time together in Kanto. I know why they were doing it, because it's like in the game, if you have a Pokemon that was from a different trainer originally, it doesn't listen to you, and you need to get the correct amount of badges to kind of like equal that out. It's one of their balancing mechanics in the games. But for Ash, it slowly became more of a nuisance because he had the badges and he was slowly gaining the experience, but Charmeleon just wasn't listening. And it didn't get any easier once it became a Charizard. It got even worse. It became even more lazy, and it didn't want to do anything that Ash wanted to do. And even when it did battle, it didn't listen to him. But Ash never gave up. He kept using it, even against Brock and Misty's advice, and over time, he eventually really connected with Charizard. After the events in the Orange Islands, when Ash spent an entire night helping Charizard get warm and helping him heal up, and Charizard finally saw, hey, this is a trainer worth being with. This is a trainer worth putting in the effort with. They finally connected, and ever since then, Charizard's been like the one to call. The story arc between Ash and Charizard is a story that just shows that if you're willing to put in the time and effort and meet somebody halfway, you'll eventually have some kind of connection, something that will better the both of you. And it's all of those elements that I think really show how Ash grew as a character, not only just through the first couple of seasons, but then eventually throughout the rest of the series. He finally gets to a point where he's not making those kinds of mistakes again, or when he does, he fully recognizes that he needs to change. Another Pokemon-related story point that I want to point out is something probably that people don't think much about, but I think it shows, especially where Ash was at the point that it happened, it shows how he had matured and he knew what was best for his Pokemon. And that's regarding Apom. Apom he caught in, I forget, did he catch it in Kanto? I think he caught it in Kanto during the Battle Frontier stage, and for a time, Apom was perfectly happy with him. It wasn't until they got to Sinnoh and Apom started to realize that it really liked performing. We then get to a point where Dawn catches a Buizel that likes to battle, and it just became so obvious that the two of them should trade Pokemon. And even though that Ash and Apom had been together for a while and had clearly developed a bond, Ash was not against trading. He knew it was the best thing for Apom. Apom would ultimately be happier performing in the contest with Dawn, and ultimately he was also thinking to some degree about Buizel. Buizel didn't want to perform. He wanted to battle, and I think making that decision to trade away a Pokemon for their own good ultimately shows some real character depth. And thinking back, in Kanto, Ash almost traded away, I think it was Butterfree for Eradicate. And at that time, he didn't really have a full concept of like, I guess he didn't really think about it. He wasn't considering Butterfree's feelings, and then he felt bad about it, so he wanted to trade back. In this scenario, he is exclusively thinking about how Apom feels, how Buizel feels, and what would be best for them as far as training. Another Pokemon I want to talk about is Ash's Infernape, and this one's a very specific case because not only is it very similar to Charmander or Charizard in that it was abandoned, but it's also a Fire-type Pokemon. In this case, it's a little bit different though, because even though both Charmander and Chimchar were abandoned ultimately, Ash never really had a connection problem with Chimchar. They were always buddies, and the problem was more about Chimchar having self-confidence issues. And going back, this shows once again, Ash has an immense amount of patience and understanding for his Pokemon. Chimchar right from the get-go had total confidence issues. Paul was a terrible trainer to it. He only cared about strong Pokemon, and because Chimchar wasn't exactly getting up to where his standards were, he dumped him off, and he really knocked Chimchar down to the ground. And right then and there, Ash decided to train Chimchar and help show that even if a Pokemon is weak from the beginning, you can eventually build them up to be something great. But it certainly wasn't easy. Chimchar's confidence issues really affected its battling. It had temper tantrums and moments where it just basically freaked out because it was afraid of its own strength or innate strength and afraid of its own weaknesses. And it really took Ash a lot of skill to make sure that Chimchar knew that he had support and love all the way through, and no matter what, Chimchar would always be his Pokemon. Eventually, Chimchar would evolve into a Monferno and then into a Infernape and become one of Ash's strongest Pokemon overall. Now, those are some points about Pokemon specifically that I wanted to touch on that show how good of a trainer Ash is. But let's talk about his accomplishments, because he has a lot of them. For one, he's placed in every Pokemon League in some way. Whether it be top 16 or top 2, it doesn't matter. He's made it into the top 16 in some capacity. And the fact that he was able to do that in his first try to make it to top 16 is actually shows that he had a lot of potential even early on. Because if you think about it, out of the hundreds, maybe even thousands of people in any particular league that are taking the gym challenge and are going up against all of these excellent trainers, not many of them make it to the actual league. Some don't even collect all the 8 badges for their specific region. So for Ash to be able to go through and regularly earn every single badge and make it past the preliminaries and into the final rounds of a Pokemon League, that says a lot. In Kanto, he made it in the top 16. In Johto, he made it in the top 8. In Hoenn, he made it in the top 8. In Sinnoh, he made it in the top 4. And in Unova, he made it in the top 8. Albeit, the Black and White series was a little bit of a backstep for him, but that's purely writing. Then in Kalos, he made it to the top 2. And finally, in Alola, he became the champion. Now, granted, that's because there was no prior champion, but he won. At the end of the day, he won the Pokemon League in the Alola region, making him at least the winner of the Pokemon League. Those are all major achievements that not many trainers anywhere can really say. Not only that, but he's also the champion of the Orange Island League, which is kind of a weird one because he had to do a bunch of challenges. They're kind of like the Alola trials. But either way, he defeated that version of that Drake and ultimately got the trophy. And now we have him in Pokemon Journeys, where he is climbing the ladder so quickly. I got to imagine that he didn't start too much after the new season had started for the World Coronation series. But, like, he is climbing. He's already in the Great Ball series. He's well on his way to being in the Ultra Ball series. And I'm sure that he'll eventually kind of have a setback and have to drop down or something like that and have to build back up. But ultimately, like, if you haven't already watched my World Coronation series top 8 video, one, I recommend watching it because I have some cool ideas for who could be in the top 8. But to just say one I definitely think will be Ash eventually, and he might not win the whole thing, but I definitely think he's gonna make it, and for good reason, because he is a good trainer. And one of the reasons why I think he does so well in the tournaments is because he actively evolves when he's battling. Every battle that he has is never totally standard. Many of his battles, like, outside of maybe, like, kind of the first season, maybe the second one, he's doing something creative. He's either having his Pokemon jump up a rock climb, or using rock climb to jump up onto Draco Meteors, or he's using Greninja to ice skate on these, like, ice skate knife things, or he's having Pikachu or Breezel use that, like, that tactical, like, spin move to make a shield for themselves. There's always something that shows that he's growing or having some kind of thought. He is a genius in battle, and like, he's very dumb. I'm not gonna lie, he's got that shonen battler dumb where he's, like, kind of dumb outside of battle, but when the time comes for him to finally actively participate in the one thing that he's really good at, he kind of knuckles down. And sometimes, again, like, there are some instances, specifically in the Black and White series, where things are not actually very good. He's very dumb in the Black and White series. I kind of omit that from his canon storyline because it's just, like, he's so dumbed down from that. That basically does not count. And even then, he did make it into the top 8. So, hey, that's something. Time and time has shown that Ash is great with Pokemon. He's a great battler. He's very keen and smart when it comes to how to treat Pokemon and how to use them in battle. And ultimately, he grows and learns. He actively remembers things, especially now, when he remembers Pokemon's names. He remembers, oh, this is their typing. This is what I need to do. And even though a lot of times he'll battle against the grain, where it's like, oh, he uses Pikachu against a rock type, or not a rock type, ground type. At the end of the day, he's doing this very specifically. So I think all of those experiences together really show how good of a trainer he is. So even if you're gonna cherry pick the dumb points where he forgets something, or he has to look at his Pokedex to remember what a Pokemon is, or he says something dumb in general, remember that he has made some serious strides in battling and ultimately has faced some very tough competitors, even facing champions. So, and then that was well before he was even a champion. So when somebody asks you, is Ash a good trainer? Your answer has to be yes, he is ultimately a good trainer. Flawed, but ultimately he does have the skills to pay the bills. So those are my points for Ash being a good trainer. Let me know down below in the comments section whether you agree with me. Do you agree with any of the points that I made? Do you disagree? Do you have any additional points to make? Maybe something that I missed that shows that he is a good trainer? Or do you have any proof that maybe he's not so great a trainer? Let me know down below in the comments section, and remember to like if you enjoyed anything I had to say, and remember to subscribe if you want to see more from me. I will see you guys in another video hopefully soon. So long!